All right. So first of all, I'd just like to say I'm a huge fan of the show. Know me, I live for your jazz snaps. And you're like the lefty father we all wish we had.
Oh.
I can imagine you whenever the revolution starts saying, hey, y'all can't go to the revolution because Target's closed and you won't be able to reapply any sunscreen and you won't be able to stay hydrated. So for that, I thank you all very much.
Well, you're welcome, I think.
So my main point of discussion is the whole Medicare for all argument. And, you know, I'm not a fan of Jimmy Dore. I'm much more of a fan of the ecosystem that you built. Huge fan of Nomi's show. Was a huge fan of Michael's show as well. So I love that entire community that you have. That being said, I really think it is a good idea for us to bring up that Medicare for all for a vote. And I've got a few, I'd like to discuss it with you guys and see what y'all think about it. I've heard a lot of the discourse that y'all have mentioned, and my main points are that right now, ACA has never been weaker. Trump has been trying to completely do away with it, and Joe Biden, we know that he's going to rebuild it. So if we don't attack it from now, it's going to be really, really tough to do in the future. And the third point is that right now, in a pandemic, a lot of people are losing their health insurance. I lost mine whenever I lost my job a few months ago. And because of that, I think we do have a really, really strong case to make the point that we deserve Medicare for all as citizens of the country and not just as employees. And if we're able to really put it there as a vote, then we could have all of the people who are for it that we know have co-sponsored it get on the floor, make their point about it. And whenever it does get knocked down, which we know, this could incite that direct action that Jamie always talks about. And we could leverage that in order to really make these protests and hold our individual representatives accountable and try to force them or kick them out in the next 2 years. And in that way, I see it sort of like tacking and sailing, where we use the inside-outside strategy that Lula da Silva was so famous for effectively utilizing in order to really build that coalition on the inside and outside.
Let me just see if I understand the chain of events that happened. Like, look, and again, I just want to stipulate that I think it was, I think the idea of leveraging the vote has value. Leveraging the vote for Pelosi has value. Okay. But if I understand what you're saying here is what's going to happen is this vote's going to come to the floor. Now, presumably what has to happen is 10, I think it's approximately, it depends on how many people show up. All right. The way that the voting works is this. You need to get the majority of votes for the speaker of named votes. So for instance, the progressives who go there, they have to go, because if they don't go, it's still just a majority of named votes. So 10 progressives could not show up in Congress, and it would still be, it would be close there. Let's say 9 could not show up in Congress. And if everybody else in the Democratic and the Republican caucus showed up, I think there'd be one more vote for Nancy Pelosi. So they need to show up. They cannot vote present, because if they vote present, they still have the same dynamic. It's as if they're not there. They need to vote for somebody else. Let's say they vote for Noam Chomsky. All right. Then it goes back. There's no winner because nobody gets the majority of the voting named votes. Goes back to the caucus. They say, we demand a vote on Medicare for all. Okay, you'll get that vote. Incidentally, all of you will never get a committee ship. You don't ever, we're going to nail you on everything. But okay, you're going to get your vote. Then the vote comes back. The full House votes on Medicare for all. The vote ends up being approximately 315 to 118. Whatever it is, 305 to 118. I don't know how many, 435, but we have some that it might be extant. So Medicare for all, assuming every single one of the co-sponsors of the bill vote for it, it loses by 300 votes. Then
Right.
according to the plan, the Democrats who voted against Medicare for All, who had already not co-sponsored the bill, that list gets disseminated. There are, 200 districts, 110 districts, let's just say off the top of my head, 100 districts, let's call it 100 districts, where Democrats voted against Medicare for All. And 2 years from now, that vote, because people are going to organize against it, is going to vote those Democrats out, and a Democrat who supported Medicare for All in. And that's the upside of this. Have I got that right?
I would make a few different alterations to that. Medicare for All is important not only to Democrats, but it's also important to Republicans. By doing this, we really say this is less of a nonpartisan. We make it more of a nonpartisan issue.
Okay, but I mean, in terms of change, there's going to be Republican organizations who are going to primary Republican lawmakers who don't do Medicare for All. Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm suggesting that we put it in the national consciousness, like Bernie Sanders did for us in 2016.
Bernie Sanders did it.
It's the most popular piece of legislation in the world that has absolutely zero path right now in Congress. It's not because Republican voters don't want to vote for it.
I don't want to refute it. I just want to look at the best case scenario. I'm just trying to tease out how this actually physically works and the benefit that comes from it.
And as Sam says, in this best case scenario, there will be more retaliation against those members that organize it. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just going through this.
Trade-off.
Right. That is the trade-off.
I would say we can't be afraid of that retaliation.
I know.
Obama couldn't get anything done because they ran against Obamacare, his one piece of legislation
I want to just keep this focused here. Okay.
I think that is focused.
Keep out the retaliation for a moment. Like that is that the best scenario?
So I've had several debates with my friends. I was actually on your side of saying we should.
No, I don't. You don't need to give me the filler. I'm just trying to look at this thing.
I think that's
in its shiniest
that's
look.
the best option.
Okay.
I think that's the best bet.
So in that scenario, and so now in terms of cost, I know you're not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of it either. The cost is that you inhibit the ability of our greatest allies in the House to negotiate for anything, to build a coalition with anybody. At best, maybe they voted for Hakeem Jeffries or Noam Chomsky or whomever for speaker. Eventually they give in. This vote happens. It gets slaughtered, right? 3-1 in the Congress. And you have diminished the power of the progressives on this issue. And ostensibly, it's going to get us what?
Well, 2 points about that. Every representative, everyone who went up for election that supported Medicare for All won their seat. You guys have mentioned that on the show several times. Also, on Nomi's last show, she mentioned that AOC lost her committee chair on the energy committee.
Well, she didn't
lose it. She never had
She didn't get it. Yeah. Well, she did lose the vote. She did. There was a vote.
She wasn't on the committee. But part of that
so she lost the vote. But see, she lost the vote because the other candidate or the other person who was able to get that position leveraged her vote where she said publicly, I'm not in support of Nancy Pelosi.
No, you're sequencing this wrong. She said that.
I am.
She said that.
But I
she said that 2 or 3 years. She
it.
voted against Nancy Pelosi 2 years ago. But what happened in this instance is you had a lot of people who were mad at AOC for primarying Republicans. This was primarying Democrats. This was them disciplining AOC. The issue of her, of Rice
said it.
Yes, the issue of Rice not voting for Nancy Pelosi is not why this happened. This happened because AOC was being disciplined. And do you know who had her back? Nobody.
And the point is that she will be disciplined further. And she saw those primary endorsements as an intelligent measured way to leverage her power. Not one progressive lawmaker right now thinks this is an intelligent way to leverage their power when they see other openings, because there's a reason that Mitch McConnell wanted to bring Medicare for all for a vote in the Senate. Exactly. And he talked about that publicly. And the reason was, was because he knew that a vote would sap the legislation, the idea behind Medicare for all, of its power. And now progressives, ostensibly, I mean, I know you are coming in good faith, but yes, I should take that back. A lot of good progressives are arguing for this, and I disagree because I don't think it is strategic. And, you know, Eric Levitz wrote in his piece today, and I think it's just a really great point, that the morality of an idea has to be equated with, or has to be seen in balance with, its practicality or its likeliness to succeed in a current moment. And a lot of that can be from outside pressure, and you can change things. But right now, it's not within the realm of possibility, because progressives lost on the presidential level and did not make as many gains as they could have. There is no leverage. And so all it does is open the door for further retaliation again. Right. It's just slamming your head against the wall, or slamming the remote, as Sam has been using. All it does.
Exhausting yourself.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, that's the thing is, if there was a union involved in this, I'm hearing way too much about protests and not enough about strikes. You're not going to change this level with protests, I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong, but if that's the theory, I think we should be explicit about that, and I think it bears scrutiny.
Can I mention something real quick? You know, Jane McAlevey comes on your show a lot, and my show, and I happened to pull up her book. If you guys haven't seen it, I have it right here. I'm going to read one little part at the back, because she's been talking about this for years. And there's one line, it's just on the cover of the book. On the cover, it says that a strategy today's progressives have mostly abandoned, meaning the power. Okay, so she says, she makes a compelling argument that great social movements of pressure in previous eras gained their power from mass organizing, a strategy today's progressives have mostly abandoned in favor of shallow mobilization or advocacy. So in this book, if you guys want to know there are no shortcuts. It's called No Shortcuts for a reason. It's people are like, Jimmy Dore has elevated this in a way that's never been done before. That's just not true. The real organizing, as Matches says, NNU really pressured lawmakers to sign on to that bill, really pressured through a public campaign. They literally ran a conference on this, the People's Summit on Medicare for All, making it a key issue of Bernie Sanders' campaign so it would become the most popular issue in America. But Jimmy Dore hasn't been able to take it through the legislative door. That has to come through real strategic alliances and pressuring the Democrats who, unfortunately are more tied to the institutional politics than they are to the movement politics. And I think that's why unions, like you just said, Matt, are key to this fight.
Look, I appreciate the call. And I think that like I say, I think there was value in trying to leverage something from Nancy Pelosi's vote, but I have a feeling that those things that should have been leveraged were more about committee positions or some type of structural reform that is going to give the progressives in Congress slightly more power so that when this issue is more ripe. I mean, look, we just elected a president who also won the Democratic primary by saying that even if Congress was to bring him Medicare for all, he would veto it. And let me ask you, so here's the thing, and he did this in the midst of a pandemic. And, and he did it in the midst of a pandemic when the concern about the pandemic was at its peak. The argument that a losing vote in Congress, and this is the best case scenario, a losing vote 3-1 is somehow going to create some type of spontaneous wildfire that is going to sweep congressional candidates out in 2 years from now and put in progressives. I just don't, I don't see how that happens. The only thing I can see is that it's basically the narrative becomes, this is wildly unpopular in Congress, and you have now undercut and debilitated the progressive legislators who are closest to you because they have shown that they're weak, and they have been then marginalized in their what do you call it, in their own caucus. And so
that going but going along that point, there's always a discussion if politics is downstream from culture or if culture is downstream from politics. Look, I don't care about JD. I have never seen one of his shows until last week.
What is it? Okay, that's fine. But honestly, we don't have to bring him up. But what do you? Okay, so what?
Okay.
What?
My point is this. Culture is now forcing politics to put up the vote. The vote will happen, and it will fail, which will incite.
There's 22,000 people.
And then it'll incite that motion back into the political sphere.
Dude, there's 22,000 people who signed a petition. The culture you're talking about is a very narrow culture on Twitter.
Okay.
But even then, it's still the most popular, as Sam just said, if they were able to say that they were going to veto it, the reason why Joe Biden was able to say that was a well thought out thing. He wouldn't take that risk if he didn't know that the institutions in which this thing are to get passed would not allow it. He wouldn't have said that. And of course, it works to Capitol's advantage and his own advantage. But this is the most popular piece of legislation. It's like Donald Trump taking on the postal workers. The most popular agency is the post office. So that's culture. But clearly the culture is not affecting the institutions. And that only happens through very tactical organizing. And if it takes 3 years, look how much effort Obama put into Obamacare. Right? They did massive campaigns on this. And of course, it's a flawed piece of legislation. But then it became the right wing's obsession. And, when I say, obviously, Obama's a neoliberal, but I say that there was a lot of other work that he could have gotten passed that he wasn't able to get passed because it became the obsession, that and Benghazi, of the Republicans. And so, do we want to lose our ability to get rent relief immediately, tomorrow, literally tomorrow? Do we want to lose our ability to raise the minimum wage, which is on the table right now, as Amma says, and many other things that are immediately within our grasp because we want to draw this out for 3 years because it will take that long to pass? That's just how legislation moves. It's not, even if we elect a new Congress full of progressives, that'll still be in 3 years.
All right. Well, that's I wanted to have I invited one person on who's been advocating this and never heard back. I don't know. Maybe they didn't hear. They didn't see it. But my feeling is ultimately is like, fine. I mean, it like it is to the extent that the damage has been done. I think the damage has been done. It's been used as a cudgel to undercut the support of the most progressive people in the Congress, with I think a fairly narrow slice but very loud slice of the internet. And the upshot is it does not appear to me that they're going to force this vote. I think like the ground has been sort of, I think, farmed enough at this point that there's no leveraging of it in any respect. It's disempowered without a doubt. You want to talk about the Henry Cuellars and the ones who voted against AOC. They're laughing at this.
Yes.
They're loving this.
Notice how Neera Tanden hasn't criticized any of these people that she loves to criticize normally. I mean, she's like, let them eat themselves.
She's got her, but I think they're, I mean,
that group,
of course they're enjoying this. And so, of course they're enjoying, this disempowering the thing. And I think, look, I don't know everybody's intentions. I don't know that you can divine it. I can look back at past comments from some people who are looking to disempower these people and to create a certain cynicism by, sort of creating expectations that are unreasonable. But, and it's not even a question of unreasonable. It's just, it doesn't make sense. Like you can't, you can map it out this way, and I just don't know where that leads you. I think there are asks that you can ask that might be helpful, but I'm suspicious of it. But fine, go. If you need, let me put it this way: if somebody out there feels like they need a full-throated endorsement for the Majority Report for a pressure campaign on, to hit this domino, to hit that domino, to have that domino, and we hold that position of power, then I'm expecting a phone call is to explain to me how this is supposed to work, but I don't think that we do. So it is what it is. All right, we're done with phone calls.
That was a good call, though. I'm glad that he called in, coming from that perspective.
I like I say, I would have liked to have this conversation with someone who's been more public about bringing it up, but I haven't heard back anything. Still open to it, and maybe they'll find that I sent that kind of message, but I don't know. I'm not gonna interpret it in any way.